Hello, artists. Today we're going to make this beautiful landscape watercolor using the art elements of line, color, space, value, and texture. So many. Value is when a color goes from light to dark or dark to light. And as you can see in my picture, the background trees are the lightest color and the trees in the foreground are the darkest color. Let's look at some photographs of actual landscapes. Here's one that's green, like mine. And if you notice way back in the back, it's the light, these trees are the lightest green. The trees that are in the middle ground here are a more medium green. And then the trees in the foreground are almost black. They're very close to us. So we want to be creating our picture in a similar way. Having things go from light in the background to dark in the foreground gives the illusion of space. Now, not all landscapes with trees are green. In the fall, there are some beautiful fall colors. In this picture, you'll see that the trees in the foreground are practically black, and then they go from light oranges to yellows to almost disappearing in the fog. So when you go to create your picture, you don't actually have to just make it green. And what about these amazing purple jacaranda trees? Once again, the trees in the foreground are the darkest, and the trees in the background are the lightest. So as you paint your picture, I want you to also think about that. What colors are you going to make your trees? And which one is going to be in the background, the lightest color, the middle ground, which would be a medium color, and the foreground. And we're going to make all of the trees in the foreground black this time. So the things you need for your project today, your sketchbook, you're going to need water and your brush, you're going to need your watercolors, and you're going to need a paper napkin just in case. So we're not going to draw with pencil at all today. We're just going to start right in with our watercolors. And the first thing we want to do is we want to paint the trees in the background. We're going to be creating texture with our brush, and I'll show you what I mean by that. But first, I need to choose my colors. And I just really kind of like that autumn picture this time. So I'm going to make the trees in my background orange, the trees in the middle ground red, and then the trees in the foreground black. So I'm going to make sure that my orange paint is nice and wet before I start. And then I have to visualize where is just about the middle of my page, just about right here. So I'm going to start just making this texture with my brush, and I'm just dotting my brush along the paper. It's okay if you have some white spots, but you don't want to have a lot of white spots. So this is going to be my background, and this is the ground actually in the background. The next thing I want to do is to make my tree trunks. And you want to put your brush in your color and just let it touch the tip. You can roll the tip just a little bit, but you don't want to fill your brush with color. You just want to have color on the very tip of it. And we're just going to make some very skinny tree trunks and branches. Real skinny one. So if you notice, I am just using the tip of my paintbrush. I am not putting the whole brush down on the paper. I am just using the tip. And I've got 5 little skinny trees here. Now I need to make the leaves at the top of the trees, and I am going to use that same technique that I use for the ground, and I'm just going to dot it all the way across my paper. And I'll put some of the leaves down here on these branches because they're below. All the way across with my orange. And there you go. Okay, so now I've got my background finish. I'll make the ground just a little higher on that side. Okay, so here I have my orange trees. I'm going to let them dry a little bit before I use my next color, which is going to be red for this particular picture. So I want to wash my brush and fill up the red with some water so that it's nice and wet. Dry watercolor doesn't paint very well. And I'm going to use the exact same technique that I used before. So I'm going to be dotting it and I'm going to overlap, which means that this red color is going to go in front of the orange color. I'm going to overlap these colors and make the ground here. All the way across. And down a little bit. And as I said before, it's really okay to have a little bit of the white paper showing through, but you don't want a lot of it showing through. You want to make this pretty solid. Okay, once again, I want to make sure that I'm just using the tip of my brush. So I am just going to put the tip of my brush in the watercolor, not the whole thing. And I'm going to very carefully draw some red tree trunks. And once again, these are skinny trees. They're young trees. And they are going to overlap the orange trees, which means they go in front of the orange trees. They will hide part of the orange tree. That's okay. That's fine. That's what happens in nature. All right, now we're going to make the tops of our trees again using that same kind of dabbing technique that we used before for the ground. And we're going to fill this up with red. And we should see some of the orange underneath there too. All right. Okay, next comes our last color. I think I'll add a little bit more red here on some of these branches that are farther down. A little more red here. Yes. Okay. Now I'm going to use my last color, which is black. So I want to wash my brush and make sure that the black has plenty of water on top. And I'm going to use the same dabbing technique to paint the bottom. Now, ideally, I would let each one of these sections dry first, but for time's sake, I'm just going a little faster. So the things in the foreground are darker and the things in the background are lighter. When you go to make your picture, I want you to think about the colors that you want to use. Purple jacarandas, they would be beautiful. And greens are nice too. Since there isn't a light green in your watercolor palette, you can mix yellow and green over on the side if you want to make light green. All right, next I'm going to do my tree trunks. And once again, I'm just using the tip of my brush. I'm going to hold it pretty much upright and let my trees overlap the trees that are behind here. I'm not making the trunks really big and thick. They want to be skinny trunks so that you can see the trees behind. All right, so there they are, my tree trunks. And now I'm going to use the black again and use that same dabbing technique at the top. And I do want to let some of the orange and red shine through. So I'm not going to make the top super dense. I'm going to let some of the other color come through. And that's the way it would look in real life too. All the way across. And maybe put some black down here on this little branch, on this branch. And there you go. A very effective, simple landscape using value light to dark and texture for your leaves and trees. So your choices are endless as far as the colors you want to use for your landscape. Once again, here are the beautiful purples of the jacaranda trees. Here's a fall landscape with oranges and yellows, and then the green landscape with light to dark greens. I hope you enjoyed this fun landscape project. I look forward to seeing your art. That's all for today, artists.